Welcome to Big Blend Radio with your hosts, Lisa and Nancy, editors of BigBlendMagazine.com.
Hey everybody, welcome to Big Blend Radio with Nancy Reed and Lisa Smith. We're the crazy mother-daughter travel team and publishers of Big Blend Radio and TV magazine, as well as Parks and Travel magazine. You can check them both out. They're digital, interactive, and super cool. Go to BigBlendMagazines.com, and if you want to follow our full-time travels, check out LoveYourParksTour.com. And today's featured guest is author Author-Brian-Birnbaum, and he's joining us to talk about his debut novel. It's called Emerald City. And as soon as I saw the title, I'm like, dude, I got to read that.
It's the Wizard of Oz.
I know. It's set in Seattle, and it's an eclectic story. It delves into corporate fraud, drug gangs, family drama, and the deaf community. And I encourage you to go to his website, briansbirnbaum.com, and that's BIRBAUM, briansbirnbaum.com. And the book is out now through Dead Rabbits, independent publishing, and he's going to tell us about that too. It's out now, September 15th, 2019. So welcome. How are you doing, Brian?
I'm great. I just woke up an hour ago on a Saturday, so everything's going as planned.
That's good. Hey, that's good.
Funny.
Yeah. So, you know, it's cool. I know we're recording this, and we're in Southern Colorado. And so you're based in New York City, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in Northwest Harlem.
Okay, cool.
Specifically on 147th Street between Riverside and Broadway, if you want to find us.
Everybody go Google map him right now.
Yeah. Do Google views.
Yeah.
Level.
It's cool because, I wish actually our listeners could see this, but you actually showed us that you've got your podcasting studio there too. So you do podcasts through Dead Rabbits, right? So this is a literary podcast?
Yeah, it's a literary podcast, but we like one of the main things that we try to do is we try to mainly bring it back to community, like literary community, and also why, like how we differentiate ourselves from other presses, and not only community but also just putting resources behind books in a way that we don't think a lot of, especially the big presses, are doing, unless like it's their all-star, like Jonathan Franzen's and stuff like that. So those are kind of like our two. That's why, like, our mission statement is publishing books that matter in ways that matter.
That's nice.
Yeah. And the podcast itself, we definitely bring it back to the literary stuff, but we try to keep it fun. We're lighthearted. We let people use whatever language they want to.
Thank God for the internet. We can do what we want. We love
exactly. And they can talk about what they want. Like, we want to hear like them pour their hearts out and everything. So every episode's really different. We've done a lot of different stuff and experimented. It's been a lot of fun.
So deadrabbits.com?
Deadrabbitsbooks.com and
deadrabbitsbooks.com.
And we have a podcast tab along with, along the top bar.
Yeah, I was checking it out. So Dead Rabbits, okay, number one, you're in New York City, but you've got Emerald City going on, right? So I want to know what led you into going and basing the book in Seattle, since you're based in New York City. What landed you there? And then, of course, I want to know why Dead Rabbits is Dead Rabbits.
Exactly.
I killed a rabbit on Easter. That's why I'm saying.
She contributed to you.
I feel terrible because it was on Easter.
She got her own dead rabbit.
It was Easter driving through Joshua Tree Park back home when we used to live up there at night, and the rabbits come running in towards the car, and then they'll bail, and then they'll come back, and there were a bunch of them. And I did that, and everyone in the car is like, "No, you didn't." I'm like, "Dude, I felt it." It's like so. Easter.
Right on Easter. It's
so bad.
That's an unfortunate serendipity right there.
I felt so bad for the funny, but anyway.
But yeah, no, you guys seem really open to our name. About like 5% of the people we tell about our press, they're like, Dead Rabbits. Why?
I think it's a conversation point.
It is. Yeah. I guess there's no bad publicity. So yeah, the Dead Rabbits, it comes from a couple things, but mainly, I don't know if you guys are aware, but we started as a reading series about 5 years ago. And it's grown into like a huge community. And that's kind of how we realized that community was such an important aspect of starting our press. And so in the NYC area, a lot of people know about us. So when we conceived of the idea, Devin Kelly, he's kind of like the first person who conceived of the reading series. He was watching Gangs of New York, and one of the gangs is called Dead Rabbits. You know, the Daniel Day-Lewis and Leo DiCaprio movie.
Yeah.
So he was watching the movie at the time that he thought of the series, and he's like, let's call it Dead Rabbits.
That's what I thought. It came from like the Dead Poets Society.
Yeah, well, yeah. So it's we're happy to have the crossover.
Yeah.
So that's where the press name came from. As for the book, I after undergrad, I went to Maryland, University of Maryland for undergrad. And then almost right after that, our co-founder John, the one who worked for Amazon, when he first got his job at Amazon after college, he kind of knew I wanted to write, and I wasn't really sure like how I was going to make a living and stuff like that. So he said, why don't you just come out here and like, well, you can write and just live in Seattle with me and stuff. And so I went out, and so I lived in Seattle for 2 years, and so that's where my novel's set. Like, you know, it's basically I kind of just I fell in love with the city, and it's its own kind of chimera. Like, it's like almost too good to be true. I love that city so much. And so that's why and you know, they call Seattle the Emerald City, and it all just kind of, it's a singularity. Like, you know, it's just like, the book is about, in some ways, like, you know, the organized crime, like some of my characters' desires. It just has that chimeric sort of feel to it. Like, just people kind of wanting more for themselves. I mean, who doesn't feel that? So
I always find organized crime so fascinating because
I know.
We do a lot of shows on crime. We've actually interviewed some mafia dudes and stuff. It's cool because
oh my God, I'm so envious right now.
I'll hook you up. I'll hook you up with another publisher we know. Strategic. Ron Jack's second shout out. He does crime, and we've done things on Whitey Bulger just at the time that Whitey Bulger got arrested, and all of this kind of cool stuff. You know, they're bad guys, so I'm not like glorifying the stuff they've done, but I find it so fascinating with organized crime, because if they did a legit business, they would just kick butt with it. I mean, they really they're smart. You know, the folks that do all these, you know, whether it's drugs, whether it's, you know, corporate stuff, and this video thing, I want to talk about that in your book in Emerald City too. There's a brain behind all of this, and it's kind of fascinating to me.
Yeah, I cannot relate to you more. The fascination runs infinitely deep for me, and you're right that they're smart enough to do it legit, but that's what's so fascinating. I think they have a pointed interest in not doing it legit, and it's like they get off on, you know, like subverting the system. And it comes to me, you know, me trying to empathize with them and like kind of look inside myself, because I think we all have our own like baser desires, you know. And when I try to empathize with them, it's like you can kind of just see that they have so much anger and like so much lust that like it just sublimates in a really poor way, you know.
You mean like politicians?
Yeah, no. I mean, they're a lot of them are crooks too. I mean, like,
well, they are.
The political graft and stuff like that. It's like all the same. I'm reading a book right now called The Power Broker about this guy Robert Moses, who kind of like built New York in the first half of the 20th century, and you know, he was lauded as this incredible, like, just like laudable public figure, but the things he did to get his works done were not were not always benevolent, you know. So yeah, the fascination is just infinite. I'm rewatching Boardwalk Empire right now.
Oh man, we never did finish that.
We didn't finish it. Yeah,
I love
travel too much.
Yeah, it's hard.
It's a great show. I mean, even just for the way that how they set up the show. I mean, like really just like making the Roaring '20s like setting look so real. It's amazing. Yeah.
We're stuck on Shameless right now.
Yeah,
yeah. I watched that show too.
I know. It's like, let's talk about TV. No, but I mean, We're in
one
this
of
world
those
of different independent stuff. Sorry, Nancy, go ahead.
That's okay. I was just going to say any of the personalities in Shameless could become a criminal, just like that. But they kind of just light on that line. Well, we'll do this. We'll keep it nice. But then, yeah, you see it. So that little line, when people cross over, I always wonder, what is it that finally made them go, oh, you know what? I'm just going to go steal something.
Yeah, right.
You know,
Yeah.
because it's they're just that thing, and I don't know that it's easy to say it's greed, but I don't think it's just that.
No, I agree. I think it's more than that. I think it's like another form of just like need, another like addiction, like lust sort of thing, you know?
Yeah,
Exactly. It is because it is like they feed off of it. It's like an energy. It's a fuel for them, you know, and that's
and
what happens with
also,
addiction too. And you delve into that
like
as
you
well.
can be told what to do.
Mm-hmm.
That thing was, okay, you make a rule, I don't care, I'm just going to break it.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, it's like
And there's a rush. There's a rush
Yeah.
when you do that,
Yeah,
you know?
especially if you get away with it.
Yeah. I was
Yeah.
I was a pretty troubled child, so I know what that's like.
Yeah, I know. I was like, I'm thinking that too. I'm like, well, whenever someone said that, I was like, well,
Yeah,
what can I do to
Lisa.
disrupt
How many,
this, you know?
how many times did you play hooky?
Yeah.
Yeah. She did. All
Well,
the
I
time.
got way, way worse than that in some part. Not bad, but you know, but you know, this is mother-daughter here, so I watch
See,
it.
there you
But
go.
she taught me a good thing. So to
Yes.
give us an overview of Emerald City, because we don't want to give away this, you know, that's the scary part. But we're both started we're in the beginnings of the book, and to me, it's like, okay, I'm going to take this book. Everybody, leave me alone because it's in depth, man, and it's twisty turny, there's all kinds of things going on, and I feel like it could be developed into a series like Shameless in a way, you know what I
I've
mean?
been told that, and it's like
Yeah.
fascinating to me because I never thought of that one point when I was writing it, you know.
Wow,
So who knows? Maybe I'll get that movie option picked up.
that would be cool,
Well,
man.
that'd
I
be
think because
cool.
you've got all kinds of things. You've got, you know, sports in there, you've got
Yep.
everything. So where did the idea start, and give everyone an overview so that we don't tell them the entire thing. I
Yeah,
want them to read
no,
it.
it started from an interest in organized crime and corporate fraud. So
Yeah.
one of my dad's friends, who's actually still in prison, I interviewed my dad to get like everything, like to know as much as I could about video relay service fraud. And basically, video relay service, for people who don't know what it is it's phone translation services for the deaf. So basically, you have your headset just like we do on Skype or Zoom or whatever. You know, the interpreter does on the monitor, and a deaf person calls through the monitor to a translation center, a video relay service center, and the interpreter then dials the number that they're trying to reach. So then the deaf individual can sign to the interpreter, and then the interpreter speaks, and then, you know,
Wow.
Okay.
and basically that service is remunerated by the FCC, like, you know, the federal government, basically, per minute. And when it first started, you know, back when we first really got VRS and like the internet and stuff like that, and these capabilities started to arise, they were paying $17.50 a minute.
Whoa.
For this service. I mean, it was absurd. So basically, these companies, even if they weren't cheating, they were making a killing. And so the companies that did cheat, you know, like my dad's friend, I mean, he was making tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars. And basically by cheating, I mean, you're making fake phone calls. You know, you hire a deaf person on one side of the room to call the interpreter that's on the other side of the room in the call center, you know. And then they'll just sit there and they'll just, you know, they'll eat. Maybe they'll talk about, you know, BS or something like that, you know. And the minutes are running, and every minute that counts up, the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission,
Which means we were the taxpayers, because we have to pay them.
Yeah, and it's actually, we pay that tax on a microscopic portion of our cell phone bills. And I'm not sure if that's still the case, but that's how it used to work. I know. And so that's how the book started, and I tried to really center it around that. But the first draft was just vapid, kind of, and then that's when I started to really take like my personal struggles and like put it into my characters. And like for one, there's Benison's one of the main three. There's three protagonists, you know,
Mm-hmm.
if you want to call them protagonists, like, you know, main characters.
Characters. I want to get rid of the word protagonist. For
Yeah,
some
yeah.
reason, it's like pin a tail on the donkey. I don't know what
Yeah.
it is with that word, but yeah,
Uh-huh.
characters.
It has a connotation that every main character should be some like hero or good person, but you know,
Right.
I'm honestly like almost never interested in writing that. I'm definitely about like more of the, like, you know,
Real.
the ambiguity or the anti-hero, like whatever. But so Benison's a college basketball player. His parents are also deaf, like my parents. My parents are deaf. My dad owns an interpreting company. You know, he never cheated, but I work for them now. We're totally legit. And so he's a college basketball player. His father, he's running VRS fraud, and it has mob ties. And those mob ties, Julia Palantonio, another one of my main characters, it's her family's organized crime family. And so that's kind of how they like tenuously connect. And then
Nice.
Peter's the third main character, and he's kind of like her love interest, but like she also kind of like pulls him in at the behest of her mobbed up granddad, and like to get him to become a drug runner for their organization. And so that's kind of what the book is about, kind of like those connections about what goes on there.
Drama.
Yeah.
A lot of drama, because you're dealing with, you know, when you look at, you know, for her going in and bringing this guy into the family, that's a normal thing because she's kind of pushed, you're in that family. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can't just kind of walk away. So there's got to be all these different emotions for her handling that part of it.
Yeah, yeah, and that's really where right at the start of the book, like that's the first conflict between them, is like we love each other, but we can't get over the resentment that like the reason why we're together. You know, that's like the center of their conflict, really. So yeah, that and that's the basics. I won't go too much more into it.
Yeah, we don't want to root it all, but it's interesting, you know, with your parents, you know, both being deaf and then you living in that, you know, being raised in that scenario. It's like learning different languages. Did that help you in regards to writing and being able to communicate in a different way?
I honestly, I can only like infer, you know what I mean? Because I learned sign language before I could form memories, before I could talk. So, so I would have to assume yes, like, you know, because they, you know, all of those clinical like child psychologists that say like, you know, listen, if you're pregnant, play Mozart, which, you know, I've heard is BS, but you know, like I can only imagine learning another language makes you better at, you know, understanding languages. But other than that, I really can't know, you know?
Yeah.
Hopefully
You'd have to be two people, you know, one raised this way and one raised that way, but you're the same person growing up in you could be a twin, you know?
Yeah. They would have to do a twin study on me. Exactly.
Yeah.
If I had
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Well, I think it's important. I didn't even know this technology really existed, but didn't this, a friend of ours did something similar, and she was getting calls through, and you were like, ooh, what, we wanted to know what the phone calls were about, but it wasn't. Do you remember, Nancy, what Laura was doing? It's very similar.
I think it's the same thing.
Yeah. And
because you know, as I recall, it didn't last very long as a job.
No, she was really, really difficult.
Now I'm starting to wonder.
Yeah, and we would, whenever we'd go hiking together, we go on champagne hikes. This is our way of exploring the world. You go for a hike and then you sit down and have a champagne brunch in the park. So that's what we do. Yeah. It's a sad life, but
that sounds great.
I know. And we'd be like, come on, you can tell us some of the stories. Like, you know, what's going on? She's like, sometimes it's ordering pizza, and then there is like family drama. I'm like, come on, it's a story. And she's like, I'm not allowed to do anything. You're not allowed to say anything.
Yeah, of course.
Hearing people's conversations. And to me, I was just like fascinated with that, but I didn't put two and two together until you were really explaining it. That like that's what she was doing, but there's like laws on saying it. But you're hearing people's conversations, and to me, that's just like going to an airport and watching people, and you know, it's people watching in a different way.
Yeah, in a way more fun way, almost.
I know, because you're getting the true thing. You know? Yeah. Do you people watch?
Yeah. I do it. I do it not like I don't carve out time to do it, but yeah, I think I do it unconsciously, you know. I mean, it's just like I feel like one of the first tenets to being a writer is just being deeply interested in things. So I'm always like, sometimes I find myself in the middle of conversation and I'll like lose track of like what's being said for a couple moments because I'm so interested in like reading their expression and then trying to infer like what it means to them, like, really, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But,
Well, body language.
yeah.
You know, like we spent years in Africa watching animals, and now we watch people. In Vegas is a great place to sit and watch weird things that they'd never do before, like, or that they wouldn't normally do. They're totally out of character, and you can tell because
Oh yeah.
they're playing games and they're spending money that they know is a complete waste, but there's always that chance of luck. And so watching people at a casino machine is really funny.
Watching couples spend their money.
That's even funny. They fight.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh,
I
yeah,
didn't tell you to bet that much. And it's just like, oh, good for you.
Yeah. That's it's hard for me to separate that from like kind of the deep sadness of I'm sure a lot of those people have serious problems with gambling.
You see stuff, you know, you see stuff in Vegas, but I mean, and I think Vegas is trying to shift from that, and good luck with that, because I don't know, but the amount of casinos we have across the country is insane.
Yeah, well, because it's legal now. I know it's
Yeah.
it's crazy. It's crazy. I've heard a lot of stuff about that and how it's not even mitigated the black market for gambling like at all so far. So
Wow. So what's
yeah, I
going to
guess
happen
we'll see.
with pot? That's the whole thing about now with pot. It's really interesting, and it's interesting being in Colorado. You know, in the Emerald City, that's what really weren't they the first? Wasn't Seattle the first city that legalized pot?
It was concurrent with Colorado. I think it was the same year they put it on the ballot. Yeah.
It's interesting being here and having like commercials on the radios. You know, when we first drove through, they're Happy Camper. Yeah, your Happy Camper dispensary, and we're driving by, and it's like this beautiful setting, snow-capped mountains and deer and lush meadows, and then here's Happy Camper dispensary. Come in. It's like, I've never even walked in one, and I'm very curious. We actually sat to grill our friend the other day. I'm like, okay, so have you walked in one? What happens? So and it's interesting, the culture of how some communities will not, like tourism, because we do a lot in tourism, will not bring it. They will not promote marijuana tourism because the state tourism board will not fund them if they do so.
Interesting. Yeah.
So there's some counties, like you could be in one county and have a city within a county that says, I'm not going to be part of your county anymore, even though I'm located in the county, so that I can have pot.
Interesting.
It's bizarre.
There's still a moral issue, and that's unfortunately it's just going to take time.
Yeah.
It's just strange because, you know, going back to Boardwalk Empire, it's like centered around prohibition, you know?
Yeah.
And even though it seems to me that prohibition did not really totally demonize alcohol, like drugs and marijuana are, I think it'll take a lot longer to destigmatize those things, you know?
Wow. It's interesting to just kind of watch the arguments. It's kind of like it's almost like the whole thing on pot and drugs and alcohol. It's almost like its own political party. You know how we separate it out and everything. So it's kind of a political party.
That little area of addiction that each thing has with it. Like, okay, alcohol is legal now, but you can still get addicted and do things you shouldn't do.
Oh yeah.
And you know, and some of the hardcore drugs. I don't know, man. I don't know if you can really commit a crime while you're higher than a kite, but I don't know.
I think I you know, it depends. If you're talking about narcotics, like the people that are like really badly addicted, they're usually committing the crimes when they're not high.
Could you imagine, you know, being pulled over and you just get the giggles because you're smoking pot? And the cops like, get out of the car.
Oh, look at those flashing lights. I wanted to go back to Emerald City in regards to the sports side of it. that here you are with basketball. Is that something personally that you played basketball or just liked it, or why did you choose that?
That's one of the like central elements that I took from my own life. I was like a big time athlete when I was in high school and everything, but I started getting like serious performance anxiety and like panic attacks and stuff.
Oh, wow.
I basically had to stop playing, and it's kind of like, I kind of see it as like the turning point of where I kind of became an artist, because, you know, like I view sports as its own art form. Like I still, obviously I still love sports. So like I follow the NBA and like, you know, and baseball and all this stuff, but all the sports that I loved as a kid. But but since I couldn't do that anymore, like that suffering and that pain, like I'm never going to get over navigating it, you know? And Benison is struggling with the same sort of stuff. It's like he's going through these periods where he just can't, there's like a hitch in his head, and he becomes stilted, and he can't play the way he can when he's loose and like kind of unconsciously playing, you know? And that's his struggle. His struggle in the book is his relationship with his parents and the sort of periods of radio silence about what's going on with what they're doing illegally. And then there's his own personal struggle, and it's not unrelated. They're not mutually exclusive, but there's his own personal struggle with just the sport that he loves, and how he can't play it well anymore. So
yeah, that's hard.
Do you think there's, especially in the teenage years, when athletes are really starting to really get serious about their sports, that there's way too much pressure between coaches and schoolmates and then your parents? Like, I know my brother was a gymnast, and he was actually California State gymnast one year, and he just threw up all the time before a match. He just like, it got to the point of he couldn't even think while he was performing, because he was sick, and he started drinking milk and honey. And, you know, to stop it. But I just always thought the pressure was way too much.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, taking basketball, for example, I think a lot of it is pressure to succeed, just like in an American sense, but also on a higher level. There's something called AAU basketball. And that's where, I mean, you have professional scouts going to like 7th and 8th grade games, like AAU games, and they're already starting to like put money together to like figure out who's going to represent this kid, and like where they're going to go to school, and who's going to eventually sponsor them, and all this stuff. And it's crazy. Yeah, it's a totally different game than it was, you know, in the 60s and 70s, when like people were coaches were smoking cigarettes at professional basketball games,
right? Having cocktails.
It's totally corporate now, and it's
corrupt.
It's another rat race. It's corrupt, and it's like, it's really turned me off to college basketball. I used to love college basketball when I was a kid, and I know for damn sure that the NBA is not, their hands aren't clean in this, but at the same time, I know the NCAA, and this is in my novel a little bit too. I kind of fit it in through my character, Jason Derrickson, who's the athletic director at Marietta College, the fictional college I have at Seattle that Benison goes to. His kind of like personal mission is to pay the college players, you know, despite the fact that he's very corrupt himself. You know, it's that there's that like ambiguity. He's kind of doing whatever he feels is necessary to get his agenda across, you know? And yeah, I mean, I find the whole system disgusting.
You're not a person anymore, you know, you're a commodity when you're an athlete. Yeah. You're just, and that's it. That you might as well be a new car or a race car or something.
It's out of control, I think, in regards to having you, especially if you're going from high school into college and you're being trained for this, and then something happens, you have an injury or something like that, right? You're actually not even living in reality. I don't think, when you're being pumped that way, you know, it's kind of the stardom. And I think we are actually right now, even we've done interviews on this where the youth of right now going through school and the world of Instagram has created this sensationalism where there's no real, people aren't living, the young are not living in a reality-based world, and it's this fake culture.
Well,
And
they're
when
not getting to be a kid.
the sports thing, we've interviewed some coaches from LSU, Alabama. We did a show, put them all on, and was it Alabama, Louisiana, and Florida? That was the three. And these were, you know, we're talking historic. There was these historic photo books of these colleges, and they came on, and these were, you know, they're all retired. So this is way back when, and they all basically said what's going on now is corrupt for the youth. It's corrupt in regards to what people are paying in, and all the merchandising is way out of control. When we went to, and we're not very sports people, I just go, look, men running around with a ball,
Tights,
you know, and shoulder pads, you know, men in tights. But it's true. But I didn't know about basketball. I grew up and there's netball, and you know, we played it's different things in Africa, you know. But we went to a USC versus Bruins game or something, a football game. In LA.
USC versus UCLA.
Right. And I couldn't believe there's a rivalry, which is healthy, right? But then there's the over-the-top rivalry, and I couldn't believe how much merchandise was a part of this. Like it's gone beyond. It's just way beyond. This is something now televised and everything, and I don't know. To me, I wonder about where the reality is. If they need some help, you know, some athletes I think have their head on the shoulders and maybe have, you know, the parents who say this is, you know, you need to have, you know, another job in the pipeline. You need to be, you know, be smart about money, things like that. Same as musicians. I see the same thing. It's, you know, the music industry. That's where it's that sensationalism. Where's your 2 feet on the ground? It's scary.
No.
Yeah, it is scary, and the amount of money that goes into those athletic programs is just enormous. And to think that these kids, without whom they could not put on any of these shows, don't get paid a dime, and they justify it with scholarships, and it really is disgusting to me. I think it's all terrible. And you know, to give the NBA credit, you know, the professional basketball organization, like, they have stepped up, and now the player control is just, I mean, it's at least 50-50 now between the players and the owners. And I think they're setting a good example for the amateur leagues like college athletics. So hopefully things will change. But yeah, that's why I wanted to put it in my novel. Like, you know, I didn't want to squeeze it in just to pay it lip service, but I saw an opportunity in that character to really like bring that out. And it made sense, you know, because you have this guy who is clearly willing to do whatever it takes to get what he wants, but what he wants is actually good. And honestly, you see that in politics, like, a lot.
No kidding.
It's sad. So
it is exactly it. It took you 6 years to write this, right? And then I was reading that you're like, let's go chase down an agent, and so the publishing world has been interesting. In regards to now self-publishing is there, but there's a balance, and then self-publishing, if you do that, you still need to have the team of editors and people helping. You know, there's that side of it. You see a lot of authors go, well, that's it, screw everybody, I'm doing it on my own. And then they leave that part out of getting a true editor. So it's same as, I always look at it as putting an album together. You've got to have some people with you. So you're going into this whole part of it with Dead Rabbits, and having your own publishing side of life. That's got to be that had to be quite a decision to do, but also feel more integrity to it, right?
Yeah. You know, any writer who tells you that there's not some aspect of vanity to this would be lying to you.
Sure.
Like, there's, you know, when I got an agent a couple of years ago at the Writers House, like one of the most prominent literary agencies in the world. And we worked together for a few months, and then he left the industry, and he said he was going to pass me along, and then he didn't. And, you know, it sucked. Kind of spiraled out a little bit. And it got really tough because I put my head down and I finished the revisions, and I made the book a lot better, but then I couldn't get any more bites, you know? And I kind of threatened my friends. I was like, I'm going to self-publish this, you know? And that's when our co-founder, John, came to me, and he had just quit Amazon. He's like, why don't we just start our own publishing company? I was like, oh, wow, that sounds like a really good idea. And the first thing I did, my first order of business was I turned to my partner, Katie, and I was like, you're hired. And she was really hesitant at first. But then she saw John's business plan, and she was immediately like, okay, this is legitimate. Like, let's do this, you know?
Yeah, this is real stuff. That's good.
Yeah. And so now we have 2 more books on the pipeline. Well, 3 if you count Katie's, but Katie's Katie's still like drafting hers. So it's got like a little ways to go. But, so yeah, we got a few books in the pipeline, and it's a lot of work, like, you know, reading submissions and stuff, but it's fun and we love it so far.
Oh,
Well,
that's
that's good.
awesome.
Cool.
This is so exciting to hear about. We're glad we found you. I got to give a shout out to JKS Communications. They're partners in literary crime, not real crime of ours. They've sent us on this assignment across the country as we go, and we're visiting. We're trying to visit and cover every single park and public land in the country, as well as the communities, and tell the stories of the communities, like who built the town. Like you were talking about New York City, and then you start digging up and go, oh, should we really be telling that story? You know?
Yeah, if you're interested, if you're interested in the parks, I would definitely recommend. This book I'm reading is a huge tome. But it's really worth it, and it basically explains every park in New York City.
Wow.
He built everything, and what he did to do it is just absolutely incredible. So
man, that's cool. I love those stories because it's like the people that really go out there and kick ass and things and do some, you know, all the parks or development, and then their personalities are so strong, and then you'll find like, okay, you know, just because they did all that doesn't mean they were that nice, you know?
Yeah.
There's like these other things. You're like, oh, but people are human, right?
Well, it's
Yeah.
hard to get things done and always be nice.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There's obstacles, and how do you be nice when you're faced with a big obstacle and then being nice isn't working?
Yeah, I think the kind of the eminent example of that, to me, has always been Abraham Lincoln, just because he had to deal with the scum of of politics, you know, the people who did not want to abolish slavery, and he had to make deals with these people, you know. And like, it's hard for people to understand that. It's like you gotta deal with those people if you want to get stuff done. So,
and you can't be sweet about it.
Yeah,
it's interesting. Yeah, we're covering a lot of people like that, and JKS Communications, a team over there, they're like, you're going to go do literary stories across the country. And so far we found, like, we ended up in, who knew, of all places, in Greeley, northeast Colorado. There we are, standing in the university where he taught, and they have an exhibit for him where he wrote Centennial. The whole region was based was in Centennial. And so there's things like that. You find these stories, and then you start digging into his life. That was Michener's, and I wish I could have met him.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh my God, I know what you mean.
Yeah. Wouldn't he be like, you know, it would be, that's just going through, you could read his letters to people and see, you know, parts of his manuscripts, like handwritten and typed, and postcards and stuff. And you're like, man, if I had a postcard from Michener, man, I'd be like, I'd carry it everywhere I went.
yeah. I know what you mean. One of my favorite, one of my Katie's favorite writers is John Hawkes. He wrote this book called The Lime Twig, and I guess the closest thing I did for her is I got her a first edition French written version of The Lime Twig. But you know, because we're never going to meet him, obviously. So
it's just like, you get into that. Last thing I wanted to ask, with you publishing and everything, how are you feeling about the digital age of books? Do you cherish the actual printed copy, you know, or do you like both?
You know, I have a, like, as everyone should, I have a paradoxical view of these things. Like, personally, I would take a printed book over like a digital reader any day. I don't think it's going to take some serious, you know, they might have to like burn all the books or something for me to stop reading printed copies.
Right.
Like it's just I need it. It's like it's just how I like to read. I feel like I'm not reading literature when it's online, or like if it's on like a Kindle or something. But at the same time, I also understand that everything that we do is something that a prior generation once scoffed at and said, "What is this newfangled BS guys
exactly.
dealing with?" You know, so I understand it. It's like, and you know, we're chopping down trees to make these books. It's not like none of the stuff is absolute. Like there's no absolute morality to any of this. So I just kind of, you know, whatever people want to do, we're gonna sell ebooks too. You know, it's gonna be hard copy and ebooks. So whatever people want to read, it's up to them.
All hail rock and roll.
Yeah, exactly.
Embrace it.
Yeah, as long as they're reading, I'm happy. You know.
Right on. So the Emerald City, tell everybody how they can get it.
It's not up for pre-order yet, but it will be up for pre-order on Amazon and on our website. So deadrabbitsbooks.com. And on Amazon, you'll just have to search Emerald City or my name, Brian Birnbaum. And also we'll have the ebook, the same thing. You can buy the ebook on Amazon and probably through Goodreads and through our site. And so we should be up for pre-orders sometime in August. Early August is our goal.
Well, I know we're going to air this September 15th, so that's your release date.
So actually,
everybody's out.
So that's irrelevant at this point.
Yeah.
Just go. So I should speak in the future tense, the present tense of the future.
We could fake it. Hi, welcome. It's September 15th.
September 15th.
And guess what? There's a snowstorm in New York City. Totally missed that.
That would be a dream scenario for me. I'm actually obsessed with snow. Today on September 15th, you can buy our book on Amazon on books.com.
Awesome.
Or through Goodreads.
Awesome. And everybody also keep up with Dead Rabbits. Go there too, because, you know, you can keep up with the new books coming down the pipeline. I want to thank everyone for joining us here. Thank you so much, Brian. Always fun chatting with authors, and especially a good conversation with you. So thanks for a good time. And everyone, keep up with us at bigblendradio.com. Our shows air Monday, Wednesdays, Fridays, and Sundays. You can listen live, even if they're recorded, pre-recorded, or later on demand anytime. And we want to close with a song for you, because we love to dedicate music to our guests on the show. And yours is called Never Trust the Living. And from one of our favorite blues bands and blues musicians, Johnny Mastro and the Mama's Boys. And that's the title track to their latest album. And I know there's got more coming out, so you can keep up with them at johnnymastro.com. Thanks so much, Brian.
Thanks, Brian. Thank you for having me. This is great.
I want for golden eagles, fly me to a bomb, break away these chains, shackled to my love. I know that tomorrow meaner than today. I can't believe I stayed so long, treating me this way. the living, she used to say. Never trust the living, she used to say. Help me, mama, I think I'm dying. Go to sleep drunk, wake up crying. Never trust the living, she used to say. Help me, mama, I think I'm dying. Go to sleep drunk, wake up crying. Never trust the living, she used to say.